It's Sybil. I am Sybil Wilkes, and we have a great show for you, as always. But today we have the additional presence of greatness, the former president of the National Bar Association. She is Madam CK Hoffler, and attorney extraordinaire. How are you, CK?
I'm,
It's great to see you.
it's great to see you again, Sybil. It's so great to be here. I love your show. I love the spirit, the energy. So I'm so happy to be here tonight.
We are so
All your
glad to have you as always, and it's been much too long. Hope we won't make it as long in the future. I won't wait as long. Khameron Riley returns to us after he dumped us last week. Damon, he just kind of got to go at about 15 minutes before the show was over, as I recall. Hey, Khameron, how are you?
Hey, Sybil, Damon, greetings, Attorney Hoffler. Greetings from California, the Bay Area.
Okay, so we'll get more on that later. How are you, Damon?
Doing great. And we were happy that Khameron dipped that on that because I thought he was such a serious young man who knew he took out time for fun. And he takes his fun serious because he was like, holla.
Okay, it was like, I gotta go. This is not going to wait. So here we are. CK, how are you doing? What's going on with you these days?
Well, I'm really busy. I'm fully back in the practice of law after really a 2-year hiatus as president-elect of the National Bar Association and then as president, which really kind of, Sybil took me out for about almost 100% of my time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was wonderful, though. I love the NBA. I've been a member for, I hate to say decades because then I'm revealing my age.
That's okay. Khameron has already Googled you, so we're okay.
Khameron, I'm 37. I've been practicing for 35 years, but I am indeed 37.
A prodigy.
So I've been really busy. I've also been doing a lot of legal commentary on a lot of these cases, these extraordinary cases that we have out here, and some of them are very troubling, like the Kyle Rittenhouse case and the trial surrounding the murder of Ahmaud Arbery.
Yeah,
it's not the Ahmaud Arbery case,
right?
It's the trial surrounding the murder of Ahmaud Arbery.
And we're going to talk about that. That's going to be a part of our discussion with you. I do want to find out from you, CK, as you have chair of Rainbow Push, how is Reverend Jackson?
Reverend Jackson's doing well. Reverend Jackson is simply amazing.
Yeah.
And this, Sybil, you're a Chicagoan, and all around the country and the world, people were dismayed when, last week he was protesting in solidarity with the students at Howard University who were complaining of a number of conditions. He was actually bridging the gap. The Reverend is an amazing mediator. He brings people together, but he is through and through someone who protests for justice.
Mm-hmm.
So he was meeting with the students at Howard University, and while he was there, he tripped and fell, unfortunately, and hit his head, but no damage. He had some bleeding, just on the surface of his head, gap back up, gap back out, went back and met with people after he, of course, he had to be taken to the hospital and tended to, but he got right back on the road and is still pushing. Today, we're in the midst of an automotive conference. He was there yesterday and today. And so he really is doing well. It's just amazing that, as we all know, he did suffer with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
He and his lovely wife, Dr. Jacqueline Jackson, both contracted COVID. Both of them are doing fine.
Yeah.
And, Reverend, through no matter what the challenges are, he keeps on fighting.
Yeah.
So, well, how's he doing? He's probably doing better than most of us.
Okay. Yeah.
Keeping the fight, keeping hope alive. And so as chair of Rainbow Push, I'm just so pleased to be a part of this moment in history.
Yeah.
I've been a part of that moment in history for 34 years, having had the honor of representing him, the organizations, and his family.
Yeah, well, we sent him our best, and obviously, just glad to get that update on him. Damon, when we left you, you were headed towards back into your MC position. How did everything go over the weekend?
It went excellent, and actually the Rev was there. We gave him a big shout out. I said I encouraged the crowd to give him his flowers, and he got a standing ovation, and we cheered him on, and I told him, run, Jesse, run. I told him,
he probably tried to get up because look, that's what we used to say, run, Jesse, run, Jesse, run, in 84 and 88. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
And I'm telling he can run now because he's the same age as the president. I'm talking about run now, Jesse. Run.
Run now, run now. Oh, that's great. That's absolutely great. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are here to talk about what's going on in the world, and we couldn't find a better person to go to give us some conversation as well as some clarity as to what's going on in two high-profile cases. Let's start with the murder of Ahmaud Arbery trial, CK. Just to give people an idea, you and I had talked about this. This is the top story in today's newsletter, and I do want to talk about this trial and the different things that are making us question what's going on in this trial. So give us a little bit of background on it, and then we'll talk about that. And we also have the Kyle Rittenhouse trial to talk about as well.
Absolutely, Sybil. So I want to set the table in this way, Sybil. We know that Ahmaud Arbery, this young man, 25-year-old young man, was chased and hunted down like a rabid dog. A rabid dog. He was cornered with pickup trucks, by these really two individuals, a father and son, Greg McMichael and Travis McMichael. And then, just for good measure, they called their neighbor who was really very pleased and honored to film all of this. Mm-hmm. And the tragedy of this case is that there are two laws in Georgia that are in question and that were in existence at the time of this heinous crime, in my impression. One was an 1863 law that, in fact, a Civil War law that was still part of Georgia law until this happened. And then as a result of Ahmaud Arbery's brutal murder, the law was repealed. But that law basically allowed anyone, if slaves were running away, it was a law that allowed people to do, quote unquote, like a citizen's arrest to prevent slaves from running away. Mm-hmm. 1863 law that was still on the books and valid law during the time that Ahmaud Arbery was killed. So the McMichaels and company used as a justification for their actions this law, which is similar to the stand your ground law. They're similar to what we saw in Florida with the Trayvon Martin case.
Right.
So that law is the defense justification for them chasing him down because they suspected. And the law basically says that if you suspect someone is engaged, you have reasonable suspicion that someone is engaged in committing a crime, that you have the ability basically to take the law into your own hands. Mm-hmm. And so, but it doesn't stop there, because then they're going to say, once we chased him down because we thought he was doing something nefarious in a place where there was construction, we felt because he was so aggressive and defending himself that we were facing bodily harm and danger. So we had to take out our rifles and shoot and kill him.
Yeah.
And for that, they're saying it was self-defense. For that, they're using the stand your ground law, which is a law in 38 states, including Florida. And that's what we saw with the Trayvon Martin case. Mm-hmm. That is their justification. And I think just as people, African Americans in the world, people of African descent, Black and brown people in the world need to understand that in these United States, in at least 38 states, you might be hunted down. And people can use as justification, well, we were just standing our ground because we thought that this, creepy, scary looking Black man or Black woman, we thought that they were going to attack us. And we felt that we needed to stand our ground and protect us. So if you are Black and brown in this country, you better be looking at the television every single day. Mm-hmm. Because there are many lessons, Sybil, that we have to learn. One, you must show up for jury duty.
And so that's what I wanted to talk to you about, CK, because that's something that we did talk about. And Damon, we have talked about this too, in terms of registering to vote. Well, I don't want to register to vote because that means I'll be called for jury duty. And this particular panel is so lopsided, CK, that it just is blaringly obvious to a lot of us.
It is. And if you are a practitioner of color in the world, anywhere, you are feeling some kind of way right about now. I teach as one of the things that I love, the best part of trials for me is voir dire, jury selection, what I call jury deselection. It is a travesty that in a community that has as high as some people say 27%, 30%, 27 to 30%, I don't care what percent, it's in the 20s, of African Americans and the demographics that it has, that there's only one Black person on that denial rate. That's a travesty. And for several reasons. One, because there were 12, they had this final, it took almost 3 weeks to pick a jury, and they had qualified 65 jurors. Of the 65, there were 12 of them that were Black. Of the 12, only one remained because what they did, they used the peremptory strikes. Each of the defendants had 24, they had strikes that they could exercise. So there was a total of actually 48 strikes that they could use.
Wow. And
the prosecutors had strikes too. And so they needed to have 64, 65 jurors so that they'd have enough people left over. And though there's a law, which is what you hear called Batson challenges. Batson challenges says you can strike people, but you can't strike them based on their race. See, there are laws in place because, why? Because they would strike Black people from the juries.
Right.
But who in a criminal case would normally exercise Batson challenges, and that is the defendant. Well, we don't need to go very far to know that these three defendants, these three white men were not going to object to this, and were going to, in fact, do the striking of the Black people because they did not want to have Black people on their jury. One of the defendant's attorneys actually stood up, and I'm going to use the words he used, and said to the judge, and actually was emotional, he said, look, I feel that there's some inequity here. I'm paraphrasing that part. He said, because there are not enough bubbas in the jury pool. His words, not mine. White men over the age of 40 who don't have a formal education. So since we know that was who they were targeting and felt should be in this jury pool, surely they were not going to do anything but try to strike every Black person that they could, and that's indeed what happened. And the prosecutors did try to bring back 8 of those people, I'm told, but guess what? The judge said, well, I just feel that there is some, and I'm paraphrasing the tone that he used, right? I just feel that there is some intentional discrimination here. But we're going to go forward with this case, with this trial, because the law would support it. Words to that effect, although he did use the words intentional discrimination. So as a practitioner, and I must be careful with the utilization of my words, but the look on my face should tell y'all what I'm thinking and what I would say under other circumstances. But it was baffling. It was disturbing. I felt oppressed, and I was not one of their lawyers, the trial attorneys, one of the prosecutors. This is just simply not to be believed. So let me just say something, Sybil, to anyone who's listening. We need to follow this case very closely. Do I think that there will be justice in this case? I pray that there will be, but I am feeling some kind of pessimistic about this. And I am someone who views a glass always half full. Because I believe that if I present, just get me to a jury, if I present the evidence, they will see justice. But in this case, getting to a jury is defending the actions of 3 men who chased down a Black man like he was a rabid dog and cornered him with their trucks and then took out their shotguns and killed him. So no, I am not feeling too optimistic about justice, but I am feeling that there will be strong grounds for appealing certain decisions in this case.
Khameron, let me ask you, do you have any questions for CK before we move on to the Rittenhouse?
Yeah, I just while we've seen obvious notions of discrimination and the pervasiveness of hung juries and systemic racism, are there any wins that we've gotten in the case so far? I mean, the research indicates that they've thrown out his toxicology. They've thrown out his records in the past. Can we count those as wins?
Those are wins. And there's another win too. Those are wins. It's good that because, Ahmaud Arbery is on trial, just like George Floyd was on trial, right? And particularly in this case, because they're saying self-defense, they had to defend themselves, stand their grounds, even though they initiated and were the aggressors in this case. They then, once they did this, they needed to stand their ground and kill him, shoot to kill. But The win was his background, a lot of his background information, toxicology and things of that nature, any challenges that he was having. The judge thus far has ruled that that is not in. The jury should not hear that. Another victory, and I know because I was actually somewhat involved with this, one of the defense lawyers actually moved to have Transformative Justice Coalition. So that's Barbara Arnwine's organization, Darrell Jones, and the protesters removed from public property because they said they are obstructing the process.
Right.
So the judge, to his credit, said, how can that be? That seems like they have a First Amendment right to protest in these United States of America. And he said, send a brief. He denied their motion. The reason why I know about this is because they hired me to represent them.
Come on.
So I didn't know if I was y'all were going to see a trial within a trial, because I'll tell you what, we were going to fight that. But fortunately, the judge ruled. So that was a victory. There are little victories along the way. And I'm not saying that there was not a legal basis for the judge to rule on the challenges of the Black jurors. But what I'm saying is, if you are a judge sitting in judgment on this case, and you say, it seems to me like there's some intentional discrimination or something done, that you call a mistrial, you as a judge, there's so much that you can do.
Right.
So we have just a few minutes left, and I do want to, and Damon, I don't know how closely you're watching, because you and Cameron are both in Chicago, and this is a case that is just across the state line, and this is the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. Damon, do you have any thoughts about it before CK goes in for a few minutes?
I'd like to have CK just make the face she wants to make to express what she was feeling, and let me say the words for you. So, make your face about how you felt this jury selection was going. Okay. Some bullshit took That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, that's exactly. That is why Damon is here. He really just cuts to the chase.
So and I love it. So Kyle Rittenhouse, right across the way from Chicago, and there's some similarities. So 17-year-old young white man who now looks like a cherub angel.
Yeah.
He looks like you just want to pinch his cheeks. So Kyle Rittenhouse had an assault weapon. 17 years old. His mama drove him, his mother, as in mother. I have a 17-year-old. His mother drove him across state lines so that he could use an assault weapon to allegedly protect property. Nobody invited him. Not a single property owner asked him to protect their property. Why would you ask a 17-year-old from another state to come protect your property when there is rioting, what they said, rioting or protesters in your jurisdiction? That just wouldn't happen. But anyway, that is allegedly why he was there. His friend, who was of age to buy an assault weapon, purchased that, and he was walking through that community with an assault, passing law enforcement, by the way. Passing law enforcement, by the way. Before he shot and killed 2 white males and injured a third one, and after he shot and killed one of them, gave him some water. So in this case, in the McMichael Bryan case, the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, it took almost 3 weeks to pick a jury. It took 1 day to pick a jury. Now, I teach voir dire. In a case like this with all the complexities, I don't see how you could have a jury that could really, where you've delved into the issues of concern to the jury, so you can get a venire that can listen to the evidence and rule fairly. We have the judge that's already made a determination. The young men, or the men that died, that were murdered, that were killed, can't be called victims. They have to be called protesters. They have their pejorative terminology to describe them. But yet, Kyle Rittenhouse is looking like an angel.
Like a choir boy.
A choir boy. They've dressed him up very nicely. So there are juxtapositions. There's bias in both cases. Certainly there's bias in the Kyle Rittenhouse case. We have to remember the protests were because of Jacob Blake.
Right. The shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha.
That's why people were protesting. So
we have like a minute to go, CK. So the prosecution, I believe, has rested in this case as of today, and so now just give us a short view of yours as to what you think will happen. Primarily, do you think they'll call Rittenhouse to the stand?
I think there's at least a 60% chance they'll call him. I'll tell you, if I were cross-examining him, I think it would be a mistake. And the reason why is because he does look like an innocent little 17-year-old. He felt like he was under siege, under attack, and he was just doing, protecting himself. That's their defense. Self-defense. He was standing his ground. Again, he came into this environment with an assault weapon illegally, all over the place illegally. And he used it and he shot and killed 2 people. He's the only person who shot and killed people during those entire protests. He's the only one who injured a 3rd. So I think there's a possibility he'll take the stand because they're probably watching the jury's reaction to this little cherub angel that's sitting there who looks like a choir boy, and his mother's sitting up there in the audience crying, his sister, and all of that. So I think there's a chance he will. I think it would be a mistake. It's a calculated risk. It's always a calculated risk for the defendant to take the stand. But because he's 17, he doesn't have a history. Oh, they're not bringing out the Proud Boy stuff. So all of the stuff that would reek of racial animus, they're probably not going to bring that out. It probably won't come out, I'm imagining, too much because think about it. The victims, they can't call victims in this case, are white.
Yeah.
What's missing all this is the black part.
So CK, please come back and give us further updates on these trials as they go on. As I said, it's always great having you, and you have just an incredible legal mind. So we appreciate you and your time. Thank you so much, the great attorney CK Hoffler.
Thank you. And Damon, thank you for keeping it real. Sometimes I can't say some stuff.
Hey.
Love it. And Sybil, love you. Cameron, love you. And thank you all for having me on tonight.
And Cameron's very impressed with you. He Googled very quickly before we started. So he's really impressed. Thanks, CK. That is the great CK Hoffler. So thank you so much. It's been a part of our program for a very long time. All right, gentlemen, it is now time to talk about what's really going on. So we talked about this in a different situation a couple of weeks ago, but now the basketball great Scottie Pippen has revived the question. In his book out today, Unguarded, Scottie can't let go of his anger against Michael Jordan. So I asked this a couple of weeks ago in reference to how old do you have to be before you can just let stuff go? And I know you remember that because it was with your sister. We had this question, Cameron. But right now, 2 grown men I'm sitting here with talking about a man who had an incredible career, perhaps not to the heights of Michael Jordan, but certainly a great career. But he can't let go of that anger he has against Michael Jordan. When is it time to let it go? What do you think, Damon?
Well, first of all, it's more envy than anger, I believe.
Envy. Okay.
It's really envy, and at some point you gotta get over that. He wouldn't be the person he is. All the perks he's enjoyed in life, some of the things that he's doing to this day, we wouldn't even be talking about him or this book if he wasn't talking about Michael. If it was an autobiography, how it was to be Scottie. Nobody said if I could be like Scottie. They said if I could be like Mike. All right. What he needs to be concerned about is not worrying about Michael and his relationship. He needs to be concerned about that wife of his who's been flying all over the country with Future. But that's a whole nother story.
Is that his current or ex?
Well, same thing. It was during and after. And see, I know Scottie personally. I know him personally. Actually, my sister dated him during the playoff runs when we were trying to get to the first championship. And I've been to Scottie's house and we kicked it. And he asked me at that point, this is a quote from Scottie. He said, if you were a basketball player, who would you rather play with, Michael or Magic? And I'm like, Mike, He's like, not me. He's like, and all that shooting he be doing. He do all that shooting. So I'm like, yeah, but the buckets, they're going in.
Right, right.
If he was shooting and missing.
He's not shooting like Shaq.
Hey, he's shooting and hitting them shots. So nobody has really looked at Scottie. I mean, Scottie was a dominant player. The year that he played without Mike, he showed he was MVP caliber. So he should just, rest on his laurels. And the fact that he has 6 championships, he's one of the 50 greatest players of all time, voted by the league based on his association with Michael Jordan and the accomplishments they achieved together, and just let it ride. Now, maybe he's trying to fan the flames so he can sell his book. But if you say all the dumb stuff in all the interviews, there's no reason to read the book. But go out, support Scottie. Let's all give Scottie a Chicago hug because we appreciated everything he did, but he was soft. Yeah. Mike toughened him up. We saw when the Pistons used to punk him. And Mike got him they got in the gym together. And of course, he was the weightlifter more than Mike. And they helped each other. So there's no reason. And Mike gave him his credit. He said he was the greatest teammate of all time. And, I wouldn't have done what I did without Scotty. What more do you need, man?
And that's a good question. So what do you think, Cameron? Does he need more? And do you agree with Damon that it's not anger, that he's still envious of Mike? And especially when you look at, this last year, how we all clamored towards the television on Sunday nights to watch the multi-part series Last Dance.
Yeah, I watched The Last Dance and it was absolutely incredible. The one thing that I did take away from it was I took away two things. Michael Jordan is insane. And that he exhibits a work culture that cannot be applied anywhere except for on the basketball court. It's not a bad thing. He wins games. And I agree with Damon too, that like they sharpened one another. You learned that in the documentary. Their rivalry, their friendship, they sharpened one another. I think Scott is just trying to sell his book. And I think he's jealous that like he didn't get that Netflix documentary.
And so do you agree with his statement? He said that MJ used The Last Dance to outshine LeBron, and that that's one of the things that he said.
No, if you look at the way that this is like my artist eye here. If you look at the way that The Last Dance is like marketed and framed, they show Michael Jordan, who has risen to the heights that any athlete could ever dream of. He's alone in his house, smoking a cigar, drinking whiskey, reflecting on his legacy in this giant, empty, like golden house.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost to a point where Netflix is saying like, this is the price of greatness. You know what? Why would anyone envy that?
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't trying to outshine LeBron at all. If anything, Michael Jordan said that from what he learned to keep his mouth shut. After that one political fiasco he had.
Yeah, because Republicans buy shoes too.
Right. Yeah.
and I can see him as he's a fierce competitor. He's maniacal when it comes to competition. He's egotistical. He's arrogant. There's a lot going on with Mike, indeed, behind the scenes. But this is the first time he even granted that type of access for us to even have. And he was very candid in many of those topics. And I had a situation with Michael myself, true story. And funny, I got so many stories in my career that happened. People probably think I make up. So
but this would happen for real.
I'll trade you a story if you like, David.
Right. So this was Juanita Jordan's birthday, and there was a gathering at this rooftop penthouse where they have down on Lakeshore Drive or whatever, and it was an outdoor deck. And so he's coming down the stairs, and he stumbled. And when he stumbled, I put my hand as small as back and caught him, right? And he said, "Oh, I'm good. I wasn't gonna fall. I'm graceful." And he just walked off. He didn't say thank you or good looking out.
Or
he was like, "You don't have to grab me, bro. I got it." So that's Mike. He never loses in any circumstance, and that's just who he is. So for him to be even concerned about LeBron, in his mind, he already knows he's Michael Jordan, the greatest, and he transformed the sport, and he transformed sport endorsement and athlete and corporate structure as well. So there's no reason that he thinks LeBron being compared to him is going to outshine him, and he needs to come out and do this documentary. Scotty's mad because Mike got the check from the documentary as well. Yeah. Not that he needed it. Scotty might.
And Scotty might is right, because I mean that was even a discussion in the documentary about how Scotty wasn't given the push to get paid the way he thought, commensurate to what he thought his abilities gave. And
he should have gotten paid better, but Michael didn't either. He had terrible contracts with the Bulls when he was transforming the entire NBA. But toward the end, Scotty got his paydays with other teams. And to be a kid from Arkansas to make it to be an internationally known athlete, 50 greatest, a millionaire, and a champion, a Hall of Famer. I mean, what more you want, bro?
Right.
Quinn Elizabeth asked on Facebook, "What's the beef between them anyway?" Well, Damon, you could perhaps answer that better than any of us, having had.
It's a one-way beef.
It's not between them.
Yeah. Have we heard one response from any of these conversations from Michael? No, because he's golfing and living and running his team and living his life. And, you know, I'm not siding with Michael on this. I'm sure just from watching the documentary, Mike was an asshole. I mean, it's documented, you know, but he pushed them to greatness. So anybody sitting on that documentary would not be sitting there if it were not for Michael Jordan.
Oh, that girl is on YouTube, and she says she thinks Scotty is still hurting after the death of his son. That's interesting. But I think that this and that may be true. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think that this hurt is long before anything concerning his son.
I do have a very brief Michael Jordan story.
Okay, please.
So Michael Jordan was almost my father.
Oh.
Yeah, my mother, who didn't know anything about basketball, went out with her friends for a drink, and then a very tall, very bald black man sat next to her and began chatting her up as her friend went away to the washroom to freshen up. And they were getting along quite nicely. And then Michael Jordan says, "You don't know who I am, do you?" And then to which my mom says, "No, should I?" And he laughs and says, like, "I like you, and let me take you to dinner later." And right as the exchange was about to happen, my mother's friend comes out of the restroom screaming, "It's Michael Jordan! It's Michael Jordan!" And he just vanishes into the night,
to the crowd. Oh,
yeah.
Your mom's friend is what some people call a C blocker.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then again, at least now your mother's not one of Michael's jump off stories. So let's keep that
going. and you know what, Cameron? I think you're better off because I'm not sure about the stories that his children, especially his sons, have to offer.
Yeah, I've met his sons
regarding their situations and their lives. But what do you think about what was just said in terms of Scotty still feeling the effects of his son's death? I mean, that's legitimate. I don't know if it's the entire story, but I think that it is legitimate because certainly, you know, you're not supposed to bury your children.
Well, naturally, he's grieving in that circumstance, but that wouldn't drive him to go out and attack, you know, his buddy. Mike has been, you know, he's been in Michael's shadow. It's like being Marlon Jackson, you know. It's another Mike outshining you, and we saw how Marlon flourished once the Jacksons performed without Michael, and he got a chance to sing the lead, and he was dancing around and frolicking, and he was doing all Mike's moves wrong because he was finally in the front. When you remember on the cruise, he was doing all Mike's moves, but they were a little off. He was so happy that Michael wasn't there that he tried to do Mike, and I think the same thing applies to Scotty, and he had that year, and that's why he was a crybaby when they gave Tony Kukoc the shot at the end of that playoff game, because he felt like if Mike was here, then you wouldn't give it to Kukoc, you would give it to Mike. So I'm Mike now. But Kukoc hit the shot. And so, you know, the legacy for Scotty, someone mentioned that in an article I read recently, that we don't know Scotty because he didn't have the big moments because Mike was the go-to guy. Jalen Rose said this recently. So, you know, you don't have one memorable. Remember when Scotty won the game, or when Scotty now during the game he made key plays, and when Mike was sick and in the flu game, Scotty picked up the weight, and also he showed a tremendous courage when he played with the bad back in the finals against Utah. So he's great. Just rest at being. Ain't nothing wrong with being number 2. You know?
But you know, it's great that you remember those things, Damon. But what about when they always talk about the migraine game?
Yeah,
was it New York?
That was the Pistons. Yeah, the Pistons bumped
them.
Okay. And you know, and it was crazy because that was my point that led up to me saying that Michael toughened him up, because the Pistons were playing mind games and physical intimidation, and he was still a skinny kid, you know, rookie or second, third
just out of Arkansas,
and he got punked, you know. So they went to the gym and they decided they weren't gonna get punked anymore. Together, they decided to bulk up and come back stronger, and they won, and they did that thing. So to overcome that Pistons era, to go on to be champions, 2 separate three-peats, and for him to have his chance to prove that he was just as great as Mike when Mike was gone for those 2 years. You notice they did not win any championships and didn't advance into the finals during that era. It speaks volumes for his claims of, you know, what he is versus what Mike is. So just it's sad that we even have to have this conversation so much further
Yeah.
into, looking back, because it was great. You don't hear Magic and Kareem arguing, or Shaq and D Wade arguing about who was what, or
Right.
even Shaq and Kobe, and they had problems, but
Right.
they always gave each other kudos when it came to basketball.
Right.
Scotty is hurt on a personal level. He said even on Good Morning America, our friendship off the court is not what people would think it is, what you saw on the court. So, I don't know. Let it go, Scotty.
Yeah, I agree. So let's close this out and let us move on to the What You Need to Know newsletter. This is where we have an opportunity to talk about issues, especially as they affect African Americans. And we have a tremendous staff of young people, of which Khameron is a member. And this is our free newsletter, and we ask you to subscribe. Please go to SybilWilkes.com, and you get a lot for your money. You get a political stories, you get a coronavirus update every day, and there is something every day to still report on the coronavirus, as well as a health and wellness segment, which is really great. This doesn't apply to you guys, but I will just tell you that the current story is about foods for people who are affected by osteoporosis, how to stave off osteoporosis, which is very good for people my age. And I'm glad to say I was eating a lot of those foods, but I got to step up my game in order to ward that off. And then of course we have our HBCU corner. We have some new additions from the Texas Black Women's PAC, as the Black Women's PAC of Texas, as well as a financial column on a weekly basis too. So thanks to you, Khameron. You gave me one of my favorite headlines in a very long time. I was so glad to see. But I do need to ask you, because I am always asking them to come up with a headline, a catchy headline. And Khameron has stepped up. And so, when I looked at the headline at the test of the paper, and it was blah, blah, blah. And I just died. I thought that was so great, because what does it mean, Khameron? And it makes you want to go in and read the story. What does it mean? Blah, blah, blah.
So, last weekend, the world leaders, about 190 of them, gathered in Scotland, in Glasgow, for the Global Climate Summit. It's called COP26.
Mm-hmm.
And Sybil, from like a macro standpoint, it looked like we were like in the middle of a dystopian film with like the needs of the few deciding the needs of the many, and the demographics of the few were white men over 60, whereas, of course, as we've seen throughout history, the many, the ones organizing the people, mobilizing and driving forth the movement, are Black, Indigenous women, people who are scooping the mud from their homes, rebuilding their homes, taking care of the sick throughout all of these devastating byproducts of climate change.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as the climate summit was going on, and all of the fossil fuel moguls were in there talking about, hey, yeah, let's be net zero whenever, carbon neutral,
right,
whenever. Greta Thunberg, who we've seen previously for her dedication to climate activism, coined the phrase blah 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 when asked about what's going to come out of the climate summit, or what's going on in the climate summit. People on the ground who have read the research, who understand the science, know that we need to take drastic action to fight climate change yesterday. And people who are convening, who are allowed inside the room where it happens, are just talking a lot of nonsense. And so that's the phrase that's been shouted on the streets of Scotland and abroad, which is blah blah blah.
Yeah, which is akin for you and me, Damon, I think, is the Charlie Brown teacher. Womp, womp, womp,
Right.
Exactly.
And the crazy part, as you mentioned, the moguls inside, including our president, during the blah, blah, blah conversation, couldn't even keep awake. Trump was right about
Papa was tired. He was
Sleepy Joe.
Papa Joe.
Sleepy Joe. Right.
I mean, who amongst us wouldn't take a little doze in a conference of that sort?
Yeah.
But you hate to get caught on tape with it,
Yeah, that's a buster. Khameron, let me ask you this though: do you think from your young eye, do you feel hopeful that things will come out of COVID-26, or do you think that this will just be more of the same, and we will continue to go through the blah 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 until the end, and there's nothing left for you all to take forward?
You know, I think that the proof is in the past, and that COPA has been going on ever since I was a kid, before I was a kid, and the climate crisis has only gotten worse. And I know everyone who's watching Damon Sybil, our heart weeps every time Haiti is destroyed,
Right.
completely devastated. And we are the richest country, the most richest and powerful country in the world, period. And we have the answers, we have the tools, we have the scientists. But to set a date 60 years into the future,
Yeah.
when my kids are going to inherit this world, is an insult to me.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Let's talk about the coronavirus update. I don't know if you guys saw with now the borders being opened and still having the coronavirus test and the vaccines and what have you. Have you all seen any effect of travel? For instance, I know they usually do the stories. I know they did it in Dallas Fort Worth at the airports. People coming in and going out, and now the families getting together after a year and a half and things like that. Have you all seen any of the effects of this thus
Yeah.
far?
So on my flight to California, I have to applaud like the Southwest Airlines staff, like because they didn't play any games. This one family came on. First thing they did was took off their masks,
Mm.
and the flight attendant stopped them and said, "Hey, you all are not getting on this plane unless you put your masks on." They're like, "Okay, yeah, sure." They put the mask on. They had a seat. I couldn't see them, but I assumed that they took their masks off immediately, assuming that she wasn't going to come back down and ask for snacks. So she came back and was like, "Y'all, like this plane is not going to take off if you all don't put your masks on." And I took a little bit of hope from that. So people are still out here taking this very seriously, and I completely understand that. Like, no one wants to hear that they got a shelter in place during the holidays. No
Right.
one wants to hear that.
Again. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so, in my personal experience, there are some people out here who are just being idiots. But people who have seen it, who have felt the devastating impacts of COVID, they were fighting. So go Southwest, fly the friendly skies.
So you and Damon are aligned in your choice of airlines, because that is the official Damon Williams airline.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah. Even though they went through some challenges recently, I'm still loyal to Southwest. Appreciate them. Of course, at this point in my career, I should have choices of greater airlines and maybe even private situations. But I would never spend that money like that. I would not do it. It's hard to say, because if I had it, who knows? But the like you said, with the private jets that they took to the conference for climate, that is a fact. But it is good to see that the borders are opening and people are able to travel internationally, especially people like, I know a lot of people in Canada, and they have family in the U.S., and I'm talking Buffalo to across the border, and they couldn't even come across the border to visit their family. So they've been separated for all of this time. And it's the same COVID on both sides of the pond. So, if you take the same precautions, it don't matter who's coming in or coming out. But what happens is people, we do all these precautions. For the Urban League Gala, for instance, they had to have a Verify app where you had to, post your stuff and you had to show it to get in, and everybody was in line and we all had our masks. Then we got to the party and there were no more masks. So it's a crapshoot regardless. But of course, all those people were shown vaccinated and they answered the health questions. So, life has to go on, and at some point we have to get back to some sense of normalcy. Yeah. And I'm glad that international travel is now a thing that we can do.
Yeah, it was some really heartwarming stories, people who had, just getting to see their families from over in Europe for the first time, like I said, in a year and a half. But the heartache was getting through customs. That was more difficult than any of the flights, apparently. They're like, you guys been working on this for a year and a half, and this is what it looks like. And it looked like one of those, horrific situations with thousands of people lined up and being taken through by a very small group of administrators at customs. And so,
And that's the problem. That was probably the early super spreader when they shut the border and people were packed in O'Hare Airport coming in, and they were piled on top of each other. So it's trial and error.
Yeah. Let me also end this with one more attention getter, and this is our finance column, and by the great Katrina Kraft. She is a CPA in Dallas, and she's talking about tax surprises. Now, Damon, you know that this is essentially something that when you have children, and how children are going to affect your lives, just in terms of not getting any more sleep and all the things that go along with it. But also
and things you do when you're trying not to sleep.
That too. But she looks at it from a tax standpoint, and how having a child affects your taxes, and how you can best take this to your greatest advantage. And so take a look at that if you're going through this as new parents, perhaps. And as I said, definitely check out the wellness checkup, 10 foods to combat osteoporosis. And of course, the little known Black History fact and HBCU corner, which was really interesting today, talking about coronavirus. The CDC hosted a virtual recruitment event for HBCU students today. And I thought that was a really good thing to add on there. All right. So now let's move to entertainment. I had one story to talk about, and perhaps we'll get to that. But I think most people wanted to know, who were with us about this time last week, if I'm not mistaken, Damon. And we were just going along, having a nice little conversation, and then all of a sudden it's like, excuse, I got a thing. I'm out. Oh, okay, Cameron. Yeah, I have a date, and my lift is here, so I'm gonna I can't leave a lady waiting. You wouldn't want me to do that, would you? I think that's what I heard. I'm not sure. I think I heard "little hottie." I think I heard something along those lines. But and Damon was all for it, and I am in full agreement with Damon. Damon's like, "Go ahead, little player," because you are so serious all the time, right, Damon?
Absolutely. Yeah, and my wife was impressed by it. In fact, I caught a little flack for that, because she was like, "You would never jump off Sybil's podcast if it was me, blah, 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 blah. You always try to finish out and do all the jokes and talk." I'm like, but I'm doing it in the next room. This man has to take the lift and go possibly have a night to remember. So, she know I think the world of you, baby, but you're right there.
See what you have to look forward to, Kim. So Cameron, can you share anything about the date last week?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe in complete and utter transparency. I had a date on Tuesday. I had a date on Friday, and I'm spending some time in a week in California with a female friend. So there are moments where I feel socially available, and I just like to schedule them all in the same time.
That's not to get them all out the way, but that's I don't know what to say to that, David. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I mean she's great. She's an entrepreneur, a businesswoman.
This is last week's date.
This is last week's date. Yeah.
Okay.
She owns her own. She owns her own consulting business and was a previous CEO of her own dance firm. We went to Russian Tea Time in Chicago. Great place. Highly recommend. We had the vegetarian platter for two. Yes, socially available. I'm what you call an extroverted introvert. I love people. I just prefer not to talk to them.
So when you find one that you can talk to, then you take advantage of it.
Yeah. And there's some times where I'm a writer, and a lot of my hobbies are very solitary. So when I feel like putting myself out there, it's like to schedule it all in the same week.
So is this young lady older than you?
Actually, she's younger than me. She went to high school with me, so she was a junior when I was a senior.
Okay.
She was my date to winter ball.
Oh,
in
so
my
you guys are
sophomore year.
reconnecting, or
Indeed.
yeah.
Yeah, we are. We are
Okay.
we are reconnecting. Yeah.
Okay. What about can you talk anything about where you are?
Yeah. So I'm in Vallejo, California, visiting a person who I met in New York. She is the first Black woman poet laureate of Richmond. Richmond. Richmond.
Richmond, California.
Yeah, and
And Richmond is
she.
like a suburb of San
Oakland,
Francisco or Oakland, San Francisco
Yeah,
area,
it's
right?
the Bay Area. They
Yeah.
they lump it all together. Vallejo, Richmond. I've been all up through there, man. That's
He
my
knows.
stomping ground.
And Tommy T's. Have you guys been to Tommy T's or anything like that, Cameron? It's a great comedy spot where all the comedians go.
Yeah, she knows I like absorbing information and I like being in nature. So
that's a no to the comedy clubs. Okay.
Yeah,
But have you done anything out of the ordinary, as a Chicagoan?
Yeah, I used to be a tour guide on the architecture tours, so she knows that I love a good tour. And so we went on this like 109-year-old logging train that takes you up and through the mountains to see redwood trees. And I just got, it's like a brain dump of nice, juicy facts that I can spit out on my next date. So
yeah, I always wanted to go up there and see the Napa Valley wineries. So while you're up there, I don't know about this time of year, but it might be a great thing to do as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I highly recommend that as well. And then throw out some Mies van der Rohe facts while you're up there.
Absolutely, man. Gotta keep it museum.
For Chicago architecture.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Nice, Sybil. Very nice. Sybil, you're a nerd. You're a huge nerd.
Trust and believe, young man. You're talking to an old school nerd, the likes to which you just don't even just have send men scurrying for the most part. And so the question needs to be asked, will you have another date like you had in Chicago, or will there be a second and a third, and at least?
Yeah, all the women that I've seen so far definitely deserve second dates. They all know that I'm dating other people.
Dates.
There are no secrets. They all know that I'm dating other people. Me and this lady here are just hanging out, just feeling the vibe, seeing where things go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're all watching the show right now. So, there are no secrets. Damon, you have to.
What does that say, Damon?
Okay, you're like, no, you're doing it wrong.
No, you're doing it right. I'll be honest, it's better to be transparent, as you stated, in this day and age, because you can't help it because of social media and such. It used to be a time, real players move in silence, but you out here like, hey, I am what I am. You get what you get.
And it is what it is.
Ride this train or get off at your next stop.
As we at the next redwood. Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. My mom, obviously, would
could have been Mrs. Michael Jordan. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She wants me, with the wife and kids, and
of course,
older, it's gonna happen. But she just wants me to make sure that my first move is my best move. And yeah, Lynn Powell from Facebook. I'm just trying to keep it real. Okay, just trying to keep it real.
And we admire you for that. I
yeah, but me and you gonna talk off air about how real to be, sir.
Yeah. I need some assistance, please. Thank you.
Take it from Uncle Damon. There should be some conversations, young player. Because I love the transparency. I love all of that. But also I do remember those days when you could kind of, be a silent player and not have to be as open. Renita Bland on Facebook says it's called dating, not marriage! ! 2 times.
Yeah, and I'm the kind of guy where like, hey, if we're in a relationship and I'm locking it instantly, I'm telling all of my female friends, boundaries are drawn. Right.
You getting a new phone and all that.
Yep. Delete my old number. I break my track phone. It's over with.
Track phone.
Yeah, you are an old player at heart. All right, guys, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. You don't have to run for a date. Your date is right there. So I thank you. Just hold on for one more second as we wrap things up. Damon, do you have any dates to, not dates, but comedy
I
shows?
have to please request that everyone in the Chicagoland area, and if anybody's come to Chicago, get to Riddles this weekend because AJ Jamal is in town. And
Oh,
AJ
awesome.
Jamal is one of my OGs. He's a legend in the game. Living Color, Don't Be a Menace, movies. First host of a television show, my first TV appearance, which was Comic Justice on Comedy Central. So it's not about me trying to sell tickets. It's about me giving him a warm welcome to Chicago. I'm admonishing you all. Do not miss this, and it's clean. So if you're churchy or his comedy is clean. It's across the board, hysterical. Get to Riddles this weekend. I didn't raise the price, even though he's a legend. It's still only $20. Riddles Comedy, seedengine.com or DamonWilliamsComedy.com. Find your way to Riddles, please. And I'll be there Thursday and Sunday. We added Thursday. And I'll be there Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. And Saturday. No, wait a minute. I'll be there Thursday and Saturday. I'm in Colorado Springs on Friday.
Awesome. And I will tell you, AJ Jamal is one of those great people. How great is he? He was on with me last week from a cruise ship.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he came on and and he did mention his appearance there with you, Damon. But he is one of the all-time greats, and you're
one of the great
right.
people. Do not miss this opportunity.
He really is just as dear as he can be, as he is funny. All right, so now it's time for us to do today's Yogi's Jewel, and this is something that we should all consider. No matter where we are in life, if we are people who are taking care of others or we are friends of those who are caregivers, give someone the gift of respite from everyday life. Give them the gift. Ask them, what I can do. And if they say no, just keep asking. Eventually, they're going to send you to the store to get some milk and some bread. So please give someone the gift of rest and respite from everyday life. Guys, you guys have been so great. I appreciate you again. Thanks to CK Hoffler, and hope to see you all and talk to you all soon. Thanks. Safe travels to you both as you come home, and Damon as you travel for your gig in Colorado Springs. Thank you so much. See y'all soon. Bye.
See y'all.
Aloha.
Bye.